Mathematics is ever evolving in ways to solve and answer math problems. We are constantly looking and discovering new ways to help children solve math problems. With constant testing at school and added pressure from teachers, other students, and parents, it is overwhelming and challenging for students in the math classroom. We want to encourage all of our students with their current math abilities and prepare them for their future math classes. To start this endeavor, I first started by looking into ways that I knew would help students conceptually understand math concepts. I saw that math manipulatives and visuals are a great way for students to visually comprehend the lesson objective. While teaching third grade students at Ward Elementary, I prepared my lessons with many visuals and used a lot of manipulatives for my students because I wanted to provide opportunities to diversify students' learning and teach them in an engaging way. Each of the visuals and manipulatives I used were carefully planned out to better help each student move from concrete experiences to abstract reasoning. I think that while you are teaching, you are constantly learning about your students and their needs, learning a multitude of different ways to teach your students, and learning about yourself throughout the process. I will continue to strive throughout the rest of my future career to find suitable ways that my students learn. I hope that by the help of this video, you get a better understanding of the practice of using visuals and manipulatives in the classroom, and that through my experience, you gain a new perspective on teaching mathematics. Students learn better when they are provided materials and tools that help them connect abstract problems to more concrete understanding. I catered my lessons around a visual aspect. I was considerate to other learning techniques in the process, but my main focus was that visual aspect. I wanted to provide authentic experiences for my students so that they can easily apply it to their mathematics. In using anchor charts at the beginning of my lessons, we were able to go over vocabulary of the content subject, and I was also able to work out math problems first by explaining step by step and then working on the problems together. I used picture cues with each vocabulary word to better help remember and understand the vocab. The purpose of working out problems on the anchor chart was so that my students had a concrete representation of how to work out the math problems. The majority of my lessons, my students used graphic organizers and expo markers. They would be able to see me work out the problems, and then they'd be able to work out the problems on their own with no fear of making mistakes because they could erase and rework their problems. My past experiences in the math classroom were not the most positive experiences. I had major math anxiety all throughout my K-12 schooling. I want to create a safe environment for my students where mistakes are embraced and they know that mistakes are essential for them to grow in their learning. I want my future students to be confident in their math abilities and have growth mindset when it comes to math. Another huge part in planning is engagement, because you don't want the material to either be too easy for the students or too hard for them. You want it right in that sweet spot to where it challenges the students but doesn't push their limits. A theorist that agrees with that idea is Lev Vygotsky. His theory of social constructivism leads to this idea of ZPD, which stands for Zone of Proximal Development. In the 2017 article, Zone of Proximal Development, an Affirmative Perspective in Teaching ELLs, written by Elsa Billings and Ada Wakui from WSIT.org, it defines ZPD as the space between what a learner can't do without assistance and what a learner can't do with adult guidance or in collaborations with more compatible peers. When working on math problems with the students, I made the problems an increasing effort at difficulty. I wanted the students to feel accomplished when they finished the easy problems, but also challenged with the harder problems. This created a sense of ownership in my students because they knew that they could at least work out most of the problems on their own. Even though engagement was a huge part of my lessons, it was still a struggle in the beginning. After every lesson, I worked on finding new ways to get my students' attention while still teaching them the content objective. At the beginning of my teaching, I realized that just explicit instruction was not beneficial for every student. Each student has different learning needs. So I needed to make my lessons with the intent of evolving all the students with the lessons. While talking about the vocabulary on the anchor chart, I had the words and definitions written out on cardstock, and students had to match the vocabulary words to its definition. This made the lesson fun and engaging, but the students were still on task. While the students worked their way through the guided practice, I had them group up in pairs, and they would draw a math problem out of a bag, and they would work on their problem with their partner. I also did a game where the students were partnered up, and they had to work together to finish the math problem before the other team did. Each time I had a new strategy in my lesson, the students' attention span grew significantly. I realized that while teaching math, it is a whole group effort. Math is not something that is individualized where you sit at a desk and work through math problems on a worksheet. It is communicative, collaborative, and engaging. Working with students firsthand was an amazing experience, and I learned so much about my students and myself as a teacher. I now know that I want my students to know that they are capable of hard things. We want to push our students to succeed in the math classroom because we know that we are giving them the tools to succeed. Math is something that can be engaging and interesting if we make it. I want to get my students excited about math by using new and different strategies with each of my lessons. Engagement is key when planning an effective lesson, and using visuals and manipulatives is a great starting point for getting your students engaged with the lesson because they make the students interact with the lesson instead of you, the teacher, explicitly teaching them everything. A quote written by Dale Carnegie stood out to me when thinking about my time at Ward Elementary, and it goes like this. Most of the important things in the world have been accomplished by people who keep on trying where there seemed no hope at all. For the sake of our students, we as teachers are constantly searching and learning new strategies for the classroom to better fit our students' needs. With different math visuals and manipulatives in the classroom, it better helps our students understand math concepts conceptually and concretely. We want to provide authentic and meaningful experiences with math for our students so that they have a better sense of their math capabilities. In my future classroom, I want to create an environment that encourages and acknowledges mistakes and sees them as opportunities of growth. I want my students and me to be a community of learners that encourage each other, help each other, and listen to each other. I hope that through this video you got a better understanding of the practice of using visuals and manipulatives in the classroom, and that through my experience you gain a new perspective on teaching mathematics.